myself, Amy Parsons. We have Molly Keegan, Jane Nevin-Smith. Making sure everyone else is here.
Joyce is coming from another meeting and she'll join you shortly.
Okay. And we have Randy.
Randy will not be in attendance this evening. He is out of town.
All right. Well, whenever you are ready.
All right, so Amy, you won't have to do a lot of talking, so it's going to be mostly me, and you guys will participate when you have those when you have those articles that you'll be talking about. So we can move to the next slide. Welcome everyone to the annual town meeting public forum. Just waiting for the next slide.
One second, it's not moving. Okay. There we go. Sorry.
All right, so the intent of the forum, the select board's intention in presenting this forum is to provide voters with an overview and context for the annual town meeting, improve the voters' understanding of individual warrant articles, and offer voters an opportunity to ask questions. The forum is not intended to take any vote, favorable or unfavorable, other than the select board's recommendation, provide any group or individual the opportunity to advocate for a particular article, speak for or against any article. So the very first part of the warrant is actually, it's an announcement of the election that's coming up. It's calling this to the annual town meeting to order, but it's also the very first thing that is addressing is letting the voters know what positions are up. Also, you'll see question 1, the ladder truck. So this is a part of the election. It is regarding if it passes at town meeting for funding for the new ladder truck. This is an announcement that it will be on the election as a ballot question. So we will be going over that article when we come to it. So we do have consent agendas, and these articles are all done in a single motion. They're very routine. But I am going to take a few minutes to explain what each article is for consent. So Article 2 is grants, and this is a standard article that allows the town to accept grants and gifts throughout the fiscal year so that a town meeting does not have to be called when we receive grants and gifts, which we do throughout the year. Article 3 is Chapter 90. This is another standard article that is required by the state that allows the town to receive and expend Chapter 90 funds, which are used to repair and maintain our roads and our bridges. Short-term borrowing, number 4. And this allows a treasurer to borrow for up to 1 year in the event that the town experiences cash flow problems. We've never had to do this, but is a useful tool if we ever needed to. Number 5 is Article 5 is contracts in excess of 3 years. This authorizes the town to administer or select board for the town administrator or the select board to solicit awards and contracts for terms exceeding 3 years if it is in the best interest of the town. This is not in regards to employee contracts. This is more like vendors, like our IT provider or legal services or something similar to that. Okay, our Article 6, this is not a part of the consent agenda. This is, we took this out because what revolving accounts are, it sets the maximum amount to be spent from these departments, from the department revolving funds established by the town, by the town bylaws for FY25 in connection with the operations or the programs or activities that generate fees. There is a change this year. The Council on Aging revolving account, formerly known as the Council on Aging van account, used to be used for van fees. It is no longer used that way, and there was a limit of expending $3,000 of those fees on things that were related to transportation. We wanted to clean up some accounting issues, and we were using a gift account, more like a revolving account for programs outside of the van service for the Council on Aging. They do a lot of programs that bring in fees so that they can pay for instructors. So we were just cleaning this up, combining that Council on Aging revolving fund and raising their spending limit to $5,000. This is not an appropriation that we're authorizing. This is actually just a spending limit of the money that they can expend on an annual basis.
All right, Article 7 is me. So this article actually helps protect the town's investment in the water treatment plant. So essentially it transfers money into a targeted fund specifically for the purpose of replacing the filtration units at the end of their useful life. Each of the filtration units is expected to last at least 10 years. This article is funded through the water reserves, and it has no impact on taxation.
Okay. We will go.
Article 8, that's me.
Yep.
To see if the town will, this is a standard thing that happens, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash to cover costs associated with a prior year's budget or take any action relative thereto. When bills don't come in a timely manner, then we have to take it to town meeting to spend money to pay for things in the past.
And Jane, I can explain what some of those are, if that's
okay.
all right. Because it seems like everybody wants to know what Goosetown Communications is. That is actually the public safety and DPW communication system. So it's all of the services that are needed to keep that whole and working. And then the Hadley Auto Express, that was just some bills did not come in from Hadley Auto Express, and it was most of this is inspections where we have to inspect the vehicles that the town owns. Okay.
Carolyn, can I just pause for a moment?
Sure.
I believe after a previous article, I thought I saw that Superintendent McKenzie had her hand raised. I don't know if that was on purpose or by accident. I just wanted to check with her.
I'm sorry, that I don't see my hand raised.
It was up and then it went down, it looked like.
Oh, well, that was an absolute accident, Molly. Sorry about that.
Hi, Andy.
My goodness. No, I'm just flailing my arms about. No, I didn't. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. I think I don't know if there's anyone from Finance Committee. I'd have to. If not, I can hand this over to Linda.
Okay, this is a useful thing to have to know as we're starting each town meeting as to what kind of fund balances we are beginning with, because funds, those are the funds that we are using in the articles. We have general fund certified free cash. We spent some money in the fall, so the last time we had it certified, all those in the certified column, these are done on June 30th by DOR. We spent some money in the fall, so we have $957,629 going into annual town meeting. Sewer Enterprise Fund, we were certified at 83. We actually returned some money to the fund in the fall, so now we are going into this meeting with 89,546. Water, same. We were certified. We added money back to it in the fall where we have 1,079,868. Hadley Media, we spent some in the fall. We are going into town meeting with 144,668. You see the other funds there, stabilization just over 2 million, CPA 2.4 million. We have a number of articles on for them tonight. Transfer development rights, we actually don't have anything coming out of that one. Capital Stabilization Fund, we're 51,952. You may recall we added 50,000 to this in the fall, and we're probably going to try and do that each fall so that we can build up that fund a bit. The Water Stabilization Fund, that's the fund where we just transferred 150,000 in. So we're going into the meeting with $232,818. But if the town approves moving 150,000 into that account from the water reserves, then that account will go up to 382,818 for the next projects that they have lined up. And the last one's Sewer Impact Fund. And again, I don't think there's anything coming out of that one, but we're going into town meeting with 159,358.
All right. I'd like to just, the omnibus budget is our general fund. It's our operating expense for the year, for the departments that are listed here. And what I would like to do is just kind of share with how we started this omnibus budget. The priority really has been throughout the past couple of years to get a compensation and classification study done for the employees. And it's taken some time, but we are actually winding down with that. And the priority for that for this FY25 is going to be funding that compensation and classification study. So that really was the priority. And the budget is basically level service for all of the departments. And except for those that are contractual, any unions or employees with contracts, they will have their salaries based on what those contracts directed. So we are hoping to be done with that. The select board is reviewing the compensation and classification study, and we hope to have the final impact, specifically the financial impact, that we'll have an idea of what that's going to be, hopefully by the end of June, but we didn't have it in time for town meeting. So we will be addressing that at the special town meeting. We will be looking at other two unions that have also formed. So we will have additional things to be looking at. We'll have more information in the fall to be able to fund those increases, and also any cost of living or other wage changes that may come up before then. And that would be retro till July 1st. So you will see most salaries are level funded right now. So the other thing we didn't do, there were requests. We asked departments to let us know what increases they need to see, as far as even if it was staffing hours to better serve the public, or if it was any kind of more efficient way to be providing services. But we were not able to be able to move forward with any of those other increases until we really know what the impact's going to be on the compensation. So we did have to do some level funding and not able to honor some of those requests. But that's actually the first year in a few years that we haven't been able to do that. The other impact on the budget is we are keeping a close eye on utilities and in fuel costs. So we were very sensitive to that and keeping an eye on that as well.
Carolyn, can I add that there will be that handout that we usually have?
Yes.
Show last year's budget and the coming year's budget for both the general fund in this one and the next, and the sewer, water, and Hadley Media Enterprise Funds budgets. So everyone will have a listing of the FY24 budgets for each department, by salaries and expenses, and then the 25 budgets, the town administrator's budget and the finance committee, which this year are exactly the same. So.
And then as we move on to the sewer, water, and Hadley Enterprise Fund budgets, very similar to the omnibus budget. Union contract increases, fuel and utilities have impacted those budgets. There is no impact on taxation.
So Hadley Media had an expense related to the cable contract where we had to use legal fees. It's a very complicated contract, and we need to transfer money from the Hadley Media Reserve Fund to pay this bill.
And then I did see Mary. So Mary, did you want to review 12 through 15?
Sure. I want to start by saying we have, thanks to Kayla, our staff person, we have a nice brochure to hand out at town meeting that talks about the current level of funding and what we've spent funds on in the last half year and what's currently going on at CPA in terms of the projects being funded and also some of the past projects that have been done, so that people will have, instead of me talking about the actual figures, people will have a handout that they can pick up at town meetings. So hopefully that'll be helpful to people. Each year we have to estimate what our next year budget will be with the state the town 3% surcharge of the real estate taxes, and then also the state match. And the state match is up and down. It was down a little bit this year from last year. It was up, and this year it's less, and it's never quite sure what next year will be, but we're estimating that we'll probably get about 500,000. 10% has to go into the open space reserve, the historic reserve, and the housing resources reserve. So that's what this is. And then we also have our staff person and also some funds. If we have dues that get paid every year to the state coalition. And then if we have other expenses, copying, or if there's any legal questions, we've asked for funds with that. And whatever doesn't get spent out of that 10,200 goes right into the CPA, and we vote again in a year for what we think we'll need. So those are the items in this article. We do put limits in terms of time, just so that projects don't linger out there for years, tying up potential CPA funds that could be used for other projects. The First Congregational Church has run into some more trying to get engineering reports, and it's taken a little bit longer than they had hoped, but they are working on it. And so we have extending for 2 years. There are 2 articles. And this is part of the consent agenda. The Phelps Farmhouse is across the street from the Porter Phelps Huntington House, and it was donated 2 years ago or so to the Porter Phelps Huntington Foundation. It had stayed in the family for all these years. It's like an 1816 farmhouse. It had been vacant for about 30 years, and the wonderful people at Porter Phelps are taking it on to try to renovate it and preserve it and add it to their museum there, and to benefit the visitor experience, to benefit the Porter Phelps Museum. And they've gotten some grant money already to do some studies. There's a long road ahead, but one of the next steps is to stabilize the house. So they came to the CPA to ask for some of the funds to do that. They're asking for 150,000, and a lot of that will go towards roof work, foundation work, the stuff to really stabilize it, so that then they can get more grants for doing the actual renovations inside and out. I know there's some people here from Porter Phelps. Would you like them to give some more detail? They'll certainly be talking a bit at town meeting as well. Is that fine to have them explain it a little more?
Yes, I believe Brian's the one that'll be speaking this evening.
Right.
Hi, I hope you all are able to hear me okay, and it's good to see you again, Mary, over Zoom. Yeah, I'm happy to talk just a little bit more very briefly about some of the plans that are in store and some of the details of the CPA request that we're bringing to town meeting. I will not be the one presenting it. Marla Miller will be presenting this. I'm currently Princeton, New Jersey for the year, but I am one of the members of the Phelps Farm Stabilization Committee, and so we have just a bit more information here if you want to advance to the next slide. So part of the reason we're approaching the CPA with this request is in many ways the history of Phelps Farm is the history of Hadley. And this site's significance to the town of Hadley was recognized just last year, almost exactly a year ago in May 2023, in an expanded National Register of Historic Places Historic District. Now, that nomination noted the home's significant associations with architect Asher Benjamin, whose published patterns, such as the one on the right, are exemplified in the home's design in various places. And the labor history encapsulated by the site stretches from the early 19th century when the farmhouse was built to the late 1970s and illuminates the site's ties to the broader Hadley community. The farm was a leader in the local and statewide dairy community, whose success was due in large part to the work of Ruth Huntington Sessions and her daughter-in-law, Donnie Sessions, who has also served in various roles in the town's history in helping preserve the town's history. But the labor of local Hadley families made Ruth and Donnie's enterprise possible here. And some of those folks, among others, included Hadley residents like Leon Cushy and his son Eddie, who helped with crops and cows on the farm. Leon's wife, Staria, assisted with domestic labor in the farmhouse. Eunice Tarbox, the daughter of the farm's dairy route driver, whose name was Lee Higgins, also worked as a housekeeper for Donnie and occasionally as a docent in the museum across the street. So we also like to emphasize that Phelps Farm has never ceased to be a working agricultural landscape. Despite the dairy herd's sale in the late 1970s, local farmer Chip Parsons utilized the barn on the property for several years and has continued to utilize the land to grow hay, corn, and other crops. So to learn more about these stories, which are Hadley's stories, it's really essential that this site is saved before it deteriorates beyond repair. And you can advance to the next slide. So the foundation, the Porter Phelps Huntington Foundation, acquired the 1816 farmhouse as well as an extensive outbuilding complex around the farmhouse from a donation in 2022. And to date, the foundation has undertaken a lot of the initial and really important planning and stabilization steps necessary to begin the rehabilitation process for the structure. So you can see some of those here. The slide might not have transferred quite properly, but the stuff that's outlined in red are the projects that have been completed to date. And the remaining text with the arrows that's drawn to different portions of the house reflects the recommendations of Messick, Cohen, Wilson, Baker Architects, or an architectural firm out of Albany that helped prepare an initial stabilization plan for the foundation. So that's some of the major stuff that remains to be done and is in part what the CPA funding will be utilized for. So that overview is shown here. And like I said, the projects that have been done, such as bracing the L of the structure, disassembling the chimneys, doing some clearing of brush around the house and getting some of the windows boarded up, have already been completed by the foundation, among several other projects that the foundation has been working on. And you can advance to the next slide. So with these completed projects in mind, there's still a long road ahead for Phelps Farm, as Mary indicated, and additional sources of funding are still needed to continue working towards the completion of the first phase of stabilization as outlined by the MHWB report that was completed in 2023. So that entire first phase of stabilization will cost the foundation around $250,000. And the foundation is asking for $150K for emergency stabilization needs, which include, putting a new roof on over the main house and some structural reinforcement down in the basement. The foundation has already spent $106,000 of its own money and from other grant money to date on some of the stabilization work that you can see here, like putting the temporary covering over the failing portion of the L. And some of the other things the CPA money will go towards are the abatement of mold inside the house, so that the structure is safe to work inside. There might be a dehumidifier installed that will help kind of dry the house out and stabilize the interior as well. So we're emphasizing that this is really emergency stabilization work in nature. And what we mean by that is that will allow the foundation to stabilize the structure to a point where more strategic planning can take place. And to think a little bit more about how the renovation, rehabilitation, or restoration will proceed here. So we can't strategically plan for the future of this structure if there is no structure left to strategically plan for. And you can advance to the next slide. So with that, obviously it will be many years before the site is able to support kind of full public use. But once this first phase of stabilization is complete and the structure is a bit more safe to get in and out of, PPH intends to treat the rehabilitation process as a powerful public programming initiative and really invite the community of Hadley into the preservation and stabilization process. So some of you may have noticed last December, the work that Historic Northampton did across the river to kind of invite community members in to help move and rehabilitate a historic barn on their property. And that really reflects the ethos we want to share with members of Hadley's community to make this space significant and meaningful to everyone. So after that, after the house is sort of open and ready for full public use, it will be a really important keystone in the foundation's evolution as a public community institution by providing some just basic logistical stuff like office space and collection storage, but also some stuff that the current museum doesn't have to support better public programming. So there will be more public exhibition space inside the structure, and as in addition to space for public and community programming. So we're happy to answer any questions that folks might have. I think some other folks from the foundation are here on the call, but that's where I'll leave it.
So may I ask a question? Was this property the Scott property that's across the street for the Porter Phillips house with the field in front of it? I guess I'm confused at where this structure is located.
Yes, that's correct. It's at 113 to 115 River Drive. So it's on the east side of River Drive.
Okay, so was it known as the Scott property at any one time before the Porter Phillips? So it was. That's the property originally that the Porter Phillips bought from that estate, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Jane Scott
yes. Okay.
Lived there for a very long time, who was Donnie's daughter-in-law. Yes.
Okay, I think that would be, probably something to mention also, because I'm sure a lot of people in town would know it better as the Scott property before the purchase from the Porter Phillips, just so that they know where the property lies. I see that there has been some structure holdings to the east side of the structure as I was driving by the other day. So I know that you're in the process there, but I think that would be important to at least put that into the picture also, maybe. Just to get a better idea for people where the property is actually located, even though it's across the street, but who previously had owned it. That would be probably a good thing.
That's helpful.
I think people will recognize it too as the, sorry, this is Amy Parsons, that where the falconry had been operating out of as well.
Mm-hmm. that would be the back house, I believe, or the back side of the property where the falconry was, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's across the way. So like we used to have sheep in the barn there that's fallen, and then falconry kind of comes in towards that area. So it's just across. It's like a horseshoe driveway when you come in.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that too. I was just trying to have it as a location of where people might be more familiar with, so that they could visualize a little bit better the property. And that was just my thoughts anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a version of this presentation that used to have a map that indicated where it was, and that might be helpful to include.
And I think, a lot of people remembered it more as the Scott property than they would the Porter Phillips acquiring it in 2022. So just to have that little piece there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good presentation, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks.
And then the last application we have for the CPA is for a study to figure out how best to work on renovating and preserving town hall exterior. And again, I may turn that over to Carolyn or whoever would like to speak on that.
Yeah, I can speak on that. So yes, basically it's for this, we're looking at the windows, the exterior, whether it's historical siding or painting that will be looked at, as well as the steps. And I think Jennifer has a picture of those steps. They are literally falling apart and they need their ADA issues there. So we really felt, instead of just to piecemeal it and, fix the steps and then try to do, we really needed to, in replacing the windows, we needed to really have an architect or a consultant engineer take a look at the project as a whole.
And you've asked for, it's 40,000 for that study.
Yes.
And the CPA committee was very much in favor of both applications.
Okay.
Any other CPA questions or about these applications?
Thanks, Mary.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, this is an article for the acquisition of property at 325 Middle Street. And it is unique and valuable to the town. The town is pursuing this because, as most of you know, we are looking at in the next 2 to 3 years to build a new DPW garage and facility with some office space, as well as a bigger garage. The footprint that we're working with right now is very small, so we would have to be looking at a 2-story building. This acquisition will help us do a 1-story building, which typically lowers the cost of a new facility such as this. So that's what this is for.
Am I speaking to this?
Yeah, you can start and then hand it over to Mike.
Okay, so we are going to see if the town will vote to raise an appropriate borrow transfer from available funds or otherwise provide $2 million to pay for the cost of a new ladder truck for the fire department or take any action relative thereto. This was approved by the Capital Planning Committee, the Finance Committee, and the Select Board. This did fail at the votes last year, which was a shame because now we're looking at not being able to acquire this piece of equipment until 2028. And I will turn that over later after Mike's presentation that Linda Sanderson will chime in on the finance of it. But To me, I don't have the script that was in in the documents for me, but coming from me as being on the liaison to the fire department, we have a lot of properties in town that we need a new ladder truck with an extended ladder on it because of the size of the houses that are being built, the hotels that are being built. Our last ladder truck is 23 years old. I don't believe that there are too many people in town. I know a few, and I can say my husband, but that's another issue. But his vehicle only has 26,000 miles on it too, so we won't even go that route. But most people do not have a car or a truck or anything else for 23 years. So this is used appropriately. It's needed for the safety of people's homes, our businesses, and everything else that we have in town. So I'm a big advocate that we need to purchase this. And I'm just going to turn it over to Mike now so he can give his spiel, and please come out and support this article.
Thank you, Joyce. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, and thank you, Select Board, Finance, Capital, for your recommendations. Just to give you some information. So again, we went through this pretty extensively at the last town meeting, and unfortunately it was 20 votes that held us back. Could you go back one? Oh, never mind. So we've made it very clear that Hadley, we need to continue to have a ladder truck in our community. Right now, our current Quint, which is what we are looking to respec out, it's not just a ladder truck, it's actually a ladder, a pumper, so it meets multiple paths. Our current ladder truck is currently broken, it's out of service, so we no longer have a ladder truck in the town of Hadley to our infrastructure, our residents, our businesses, and it no longer meets current regulations or NFPA standards. By 2025, it needs to be retired per NFPA standards. And I can tell you that I was at a Chiefs meeting today, and OSHA is knocking on the door of all the fire departments in the state of Massachusetts, along with the police departments. And you will be seeing in the next 2 to 4 years where we are going to have to comply with certain NFPA standards. This truck, it was spec'd out in 2000. I can tell you that the number of buildings, like Joyce said, with the size of new homes, with solar installations, with 3-story, 4-story hotels and schools, our 75-foot ladder that we have right now it's too short. We are in the hazard areas at a lot of our fires, and we just need to ensure that we can reach what we need to reach, and also to just provide safety and for our firefighters as well as the folks that they may need to attempt to rescue. You can go forward. So just to go over again, a Quint, it's called the Swiss Army knife of apparatus. So yeah, it's 2 trucks in one. So it's an aerial ladder and also a pumper, and it also has a tank on it. So the one that we're looking at will either have 500 or 750 gallons of water on it, which our current ladder truck has 500 gallons on it. It also carries a full complement of water and all of the rescue equipment that we would need for ventilation, for going into a structure. The first picture you saw on the slide, you could see how much hose line is on that. So it has a full complement of all the initial attack lines that we need to address a fire. The town's ISO rating, we just completed our ISO rating, which came back favorably. But I can tell you that if we do not have an operational ladder truck or a Quint, that this is going to cause an issue for our insurance rates, because that ladder truck is a substantial asset and part of that ISO review and rating. So it could potentially, you could see business owners and residential insurance costs increasing.
Mike, just spell out what ISO is for people that don't know.
So that's your insurance service organization. So it's your insurance. Basically, the adjusters look to ISO or other companies. I know Sue Goloski is on the meeting. She could probably give a little more information as to how important the ISO rating. It's how far you're, how far you are away from a working fire station. And so that's why our founding fathers of the fire service,
You all right,
located
Jenny? You don't look like you're doing good.
that's why they located it on East Street, and then also looking at the new North Station, which currently isn't. It's not staffed, but that location was chosen because of the distance to the large homes that we have up in the Shattuck Road and Common Road area.
Thank you. Next.
So the fire department, obviously, we do more than just putting out fires. This Quint improves and aids in our firefighting operations and rescues while making things easier for us to handle on scene. We are responsible for ventilating. So in an effort to attempt to make the situation better inside of a house that's on fire, we need to let hot gases and fire ventilate out of the roof. So it's really important that we have a safe way of being able to do that, and also being able to put the fire out. Go ahead. So the longer it takes to put that fire out, the more valuables and possessions will be damaged or lost. Again, if we have an opportunity to do a quick attack, I was just telling we did our spaghetti supper last night, and I was just letting them know that last year at this time, we had a structure fire on East Street while the vote was going on. And we were fortunate that it occurred during the day when we had our staff on. We have now, since that time, switched to 24-hour shifts. However, we did not have an operating ladder truck. So if we hadn't got there as quickly as we had in our crew, my deputy chief is on the meeting tonight. If they hadn't gotten there quick enough, we had to wait for Amherst to get their ladder truck to us. And it probably would have been a very different scenario if we weren't able to get that fire under control quickly. The longer it takes to put that fire out, the more valuables and possessions or possible loss of life. It takes longer to put that fire out if we have all that heat and hot gases, and it also limits how long a victim can actually survive in those type of scenarios. Less likely that victim will be able to survive. You can go ahead. This is an example of a structure in Hadley. So this is a 4-story. This is the Chinese Immersion School. So we had to actually design the area at this building. We actually have to back our ladder truck in the access to the building on the east side. We actually have to back our ladder truck in to actually be able to reach the upper story and the roof. I was also asked why we need a ladder truck and how that extra length is going to support and help the department. Everybody needs to remember that. So, for example, my house, my driveway, it's probably 50, 100 feet off of the driveway. So imagine in the winter, if I have a fire in my own home, God forbid, and I have to pull that ladder truck in, I have to now realize that my 75-foot ladder needs to extend over a 50-foot lawn area before it's going to reach the house. And then there's the angles of that ladder as well. So that's all stuff that we have to take into account, and having that extra additional fly on this ladder would be substantial and greatly it would greatly increase the protection that we have for our buildings. While seeing the new hotels that we have going up in town, we've actually designed areas of the lawn front and back to be able to support our ladder trucks. Courtyard by Marriott has a lawn that actually is capable of supporting our ladder truck, but we would actually have to have mutual aid to come in because our current ladder wouldn't be able to reach the area we need to get to.
I think that's the next picture.
So there's an example of the Courtyard by Marriott, and then you have Comfort Inn and Suites. You can move forward. You can see the size. So most average floor is 10 feet. So if we have 30 feet to the roof line, our max ladder height is 35 feet, and it takes 4 people to set it up. So firefighters cannot perform some rescue skills, or other operations just because the amount of staff it takes to actually put the stuff up. So if we need to get a 35 ladder up, that can take 2 to 3 firefighters to deploy it. And then again, if we're trying to do operations where we're trying to ventilate those hot gases and fire from the roof, we then need to carry a ladder up the 35-foot ladder to get that onto the roof to be able to support our firefighters that have to cut holes or ventilate that roof area. But it makes it extremely difficult. And it's all about time. The amount of time it takes for those firefighters to set that one single ladder up, we could do it with one firefighter on that quint on that ladder truck to get that ladder up in minutes versus many minutes. This is an example of one of the fires that we had here in Hadley. Firefighters cannot perform some rescue skills, other operations as quickly and as safely as needed because they're busy trying to set these ladders up. So you can see that's a three-story wood frame structure that we needed to get on the top floor of because the fire extended into the attic space. So no ladder trucks. This is what that means. Just it's going to take longer for us to do that. We lose time waiting for a ladder truck from another community. If we do not have our ladder truck, that means we have to wait for Northampton or Amherst to get here if it's available. They may be out on a fire or doing something in their own community and not be available for us. We're reaching out to South Hadley. We're reaching out to Holyoke, the 206 Russell Street. We had 3 operational ladder trucks trying to extinguish the fire that we had there. We had Holyoke, we had Northampton, we had Hadley's fire, and we actually had to relocate the truck you see in the picture because we were too close to the collapse zone of the front facade of that building. So we actually had to stop operations and push it back further because the fire was going so quickly. So we just don't have time to wait. We need to get moving quickly because fire is extremely fast, especially now in new construction. So again, access for quicker ventilation. Those are two of your local firefighters, 2 of them who actually live in town right now. And they were working a fire as mutual aid with the town of Amherst. And I can tell you right now, if they did not have that access to that ladder, it would have been a very different story because the fire actually came through that roof on both of those gentlemen. And one of them ended up going to the hospital with some heat exhaustion because of the flames coming through the roof. So again, you're providing additional safety for them. The picture on the left is a picture of a house that's covered with photovoltaic or solar panels. So you can imagine, how are we supposed to ventilate a house if I can only access the front yard? We need to be able to get that ladder up and over the roof line to be able to protect the backside. That's going to be the only area that we're going to be able to make access with ventilation. And then winter weather. It's obviously, it equals dangerous ground ladder operations. It's slippery. We're dealing with, snow drifts. We're dealing with snow that we have to try and carry a 100-pound ladder or 50-pound ladder through with multiple firefighters, get up onto that roof and then attempt to crawl up a snow-covered roof to be able to ventilate it. So it's extremely hazardous, and that ladder and pipe actually offer safety for fire. This is an example of that 206 Russell Street fire. So that is our ladder in operation right now. And the next, you can go to the next slide. This is the town line, Sunderland and Hadley. As you can see, the residence is actually in Hadley, and our ladder was actually operating, trying to prevent the spread of that huge fire. There was a barn there with a lot of hazmat going on, and we had to actually set up our ladder truck to protect that Hadley residents from the radiant heat and fire that was going on there. So you can see it from the ground and from above. And then it can be used for many other jobs that we have to deal with. So technical and rope rescue. If we have an incident, it's fine, you can move forward. We can actually utilize this below grade. So if we have an incident on the river where we need to drop down, if we have access in that area, we can certainly do that. again, above and below grade rescues and technical rescues can be done with this type of apparatus. So we're asking you to please support our request so we continue to provide the safest required firefighting rescue services to our residents, community, and the firefighters we try to protect, or that have to actually operate off of this equipment. And the ask again, we've changed it. We have confirmed that the price will be $2 million. We've spoken with multiple truck companies right now. The original capital request that I had put in 2014, at that time it was estimated at 1.15 million, and you can see that increase in cost. So
I wanted Linda to go over how, because people will ask at the meeting,
yep,
what it will affect, if or not affect, what our tax rate or whatever might be. So I'd like Linda to
just two more things, Joyce, if you don't mind. Just so the average lifespan of 25 to 30 years. We build our trucks out so that we can hopefully have a 30 years lifespan or 25. And then I'll let you know that the time frame for this build out is now most likely between, last year was 36 months. This year we're up to 36 to 48 months build out. And thank you very much.
Yeah. So Mike, when you, so with it being I think it would be worth clarifying, with it being 4 years away potentially, if we order this truck now, which you're saying is $2 million, if we get it in 4 years, is the price going to go up over at that time, or is it going to still be the 2 million because we order it now?
It would be the 2 million. So we would sign a contract that would lock in that price for the 2 million.
Right. But if we wait and order it in a couple more years, it will be higher. So what is being asked now is a commitment from the town to purchase this in 4 years at the price, at today's price. This is going to be a debt exclusion, which means we would be borrowing to purchase this truck. And in order to make the payments on the truck, the taxes would be increased in order to make those payments. The other borrowing for the other articles that we have for town meeting this year are all within the levy or payment from water. Within the levy means our payments on those loans are already budgeted. It's in the debt and interest portion of our operational budget. But because this is such a large item, we have to go above and beyond what we have budgeted and increase taxes in order to cover these payments. As it turns out, last year, when this was being voted on, we were also approved at that time renovations to school locker rooms at nearly $1.1 million. And that also was a debt exclusion, and it passed at the ballot. So we are borrowing and doing the renovations currently or very soon. And the payments for that $1.1 million will be made over the next 4 to 5 years. And in order to make those payments, taxes will increase to cover those payments. Then, since will be about the same time that this 2 million, the payments for the 2 million will be, the 2 million will be borrowed, and payments will begin just about the same time that we are finished paying for the school renovations. Therefore, this is not going to be an additional amount on taxation at that time. We will continue at that same level and pay down the borrowing on the fire truck. Yes, it's twice as much. Well, we'll pay it over in twice the period of time. So instead of doing a 5-year borrowing, we'll be doing a 10-year borrowing. Or if the interest rates have gone up and that's going to increase taxes a bit, we can even do 11 or 12. So the idea is, in our planning here, is that we will make the effort to have the borrowing for the fire truck fall within the same amount of that we have already allocated for payment of the school renovations, so that when we're done with the school locker rooms, we can go right into these payments without any additional taxes. So that's the plan. I don't have any slides for tonight, but I'm thinking about what I can do, thinking about how to do a slide for a town meeting. Any questions for Mike or anyone? Okay. And this, after town meeting, the debt exclusion would be at the ballot on May 21st.
Okay, the next is Article 18, which is for the water tanks. And this, Randy would have been opening with this, but he's not here. So Scott, I'm going to ask you if you can take a moment to explain this, what this project is.
Yes, thank you. So we're looking to appropriate a potential of $9 million to replace the two aging water tanks. On our last sanitary survey, they were deemed somewhat deficient and need a lot of repairs. An estimate of $3 million to rehab them, and a cost of roughly $9 million to replace. And we're trying to get a grant for this or some loan forgiveness through the USDA. But our first step is we have to have in hand the $9 million potential money. We won't know what our loan forgiveness or any interest rates or anything are until we commit to the project.
I think it might be useful to say something about the fact that it's cheaper to renovate them, but the lifespan of a renovated tank isn't anywhere near the life of the replaced tank.
Yes, thanks, Jane. I do have the engineers are coming to the town meeting to do a small presentation so they can clarify any further questions that probably will be had, and they'll have good answers.
Thank you.
Scott, this is Kirk. I can see all kinds of issues where we have to pass it to find out what's in it. We have to pass $9 million in potential tax hikes to find out what the interest rate would be, and maybe if we can get some loan forgiveness down the road. It just seems like a funny way to run an operation.
That's just the way the federal government does it with the USDA loans. They want you to be committed before they offer you any kind of loan forgiveness or a rate. We talked in detail with them about this, and that's the way it operates. And Linda did a lot of research on this and the way that this is going to be paid for and etc. But unfortunately, that's the way they operate. You have to have the money potentially in hand first before they will make any commitment to you.
If we don't get any loan forgiveness, are there any ballpark estimates on what happens to the taxes? That question, I'm sure, will come up.
I don't want to say that it's pretty much a guarantee we're going to get something. It's just a matter of what. On average, they give you 30%. So
okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know that you're
no, I understand
the feds.
Yeah, I understand that. And like I said, this is the way that I'm working on a few grants right now, and this is the way they are. For whatever reason, you have to have the potential money all in hand up front first before they'll talk to you. And
Linda,
I don't know
you were
why
about
that
to say
is.
something.
Me?
Yeah, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yes. By in, I just want to clarify, when Scott says in hand, it's authorization in hand. So we don't borrow $9 million and say we've got it, and then they say, oh, okay, we'll give you 30%, and then we don't get into that kind of a situation. So there won't be any borrowing till all of these markers are in place. We did the calculations based on the grant being 30%, which there seems to be a very strong basis making that assumption that it would be a 30% return, which would mean we would be borrowing, that's $2.7 million grant or loan forgiveness, whatever they call it. That would mean that the town would be borrowing $6.3 million. We also know that through this program, I think its interest rate is about 4%, which is less than our other borrowing would be. So it's a slightly lower interest rate that we would be getting. Although we will continue to look into that, make sure that we get the best interest rate. We also, this is a good time for this kind of a project because we are 20 years into payment for the Callahan wells, which the town is currently paying $330,000 a year on our debt on the Callahan wells, and that will be up in 2027. So that $330,000 a year in debt payments will go a long way, most of the way, towards covering our payments, assuming again that it's $6.3 million, I think it's about $6.3 million. It will go most of the way in covering that debt. So we're looking again at a situation where even though we have we're paying a lot, that's going to come off the debt schedule. We're replacing it with something new on the debt schedule, very much going from the wells to the water tanks. So it's a good time to make that kind of a change so we again have some evenness in both our financing and our continuation of the provision of the water that the town needs. So,
that's a very good explanation. Please keep that in your back pocket for town meeting.
Okay, and again, see if I can come up with a slide. All right, good. Any other questions?
Okay, Article 19, then moving right along, is to authorize the Hadley Drinking Water Asset Management Plan project. So what we're looking for here is for town meeting to appropriate $155,000 for this management plan. This is on the Massachusetts Drinking Water State Revolving Fund planning project list. So the total project cost is $155,000. 93,000 is a reimbursable grant. So again, it's a situation where we need to approve this at town meeting to be eligible for the $93,000 grant. And then the balance of the project would be funded with in-kind services that the town would provide, estimated at $31,000, and then a cash contribution coming from the Water Enterprise Fund for $31,000. Basically, the import of the project is that it's an opportunity to participate in this state program so that we can have an evaluation done that will help us prioritize capital projects, et cetera, focused on delivering basically safe drinking water throughout the municipality. So this is something that's important to the DPW as well as the Capital Planning Committee. No other questions? Next article. Okay, this article, for those of you who attended town meeting last year, you may recall that we utilized funds to kickstart our own ambulance service. So again, we contract out with a third party, Action Ambulance, for our primary ambulance coverage. Last year, we started the process of moving towards offering our own ambulance service, which is in addition to our primary ambulance coverage by Action EMS. So town meeting generously approved just over $400,000 of seed money. It was explained at the time that the goal was to ramp up this service over time in the hopes of being able to garner some revenue to help offset some of these costs. So where we're at right now is the ambulance service, the BLS Hadley Ambulance Service began back in October is when it came online. There have been a number of calls since then, but when you're ramping up this type of service, there are multiple pieces to it. So, you know, once the buggy starts rolling, Then there's a whole billing process that happens behind the scenes. It's actually kind of complicated because you're dealing with our healthcare system and providers. So that billing system got up and running. And then what happens as well is there's a whole collection process. So first you have to bill, then there's some time lag between that billing occurring and when you actually start receiving funds. So even though the program started in October, but with our fire department, we didn't actually start seeing revenue until a couple of months ago. So what we're looking for now from town meeting is $185,000 to be earmarked for the continuation of the ambulance program to get us through that 1 year mark in October.
Do you want to say at all anything that we've received from revenue at this point that would make it like a carrot out there of what's coming back already for our basic ambulance? It's not the ALS, but it is the BLS, which has, been very active. I see Linda there.
And Mike can back me up to right now. We really just got the first payment in last week, few weeks ago, so that was close to 13,000. And as I understand it, Mike, I think we're expecting 10 to 15,000 a month. So we expect that by the time we get to fall town meeting, to where we revisit this again, that we would hopefully have one of my 15 times. I was thinking we would have 85,000 by then. Yeah, it wouldn't be quite a year that we'd be getting. We maybe $85,000 to $100,000 in the fall that we then would apply back to the budget. I don't think that we will be able to be funding next year's budget. It doesn't look like it can be completely funded by the level of receipts what we have right now, but the goal would, so we probably will be looking at another free cash input in the fall. And then we will be looking then to see how we will be applying all the revenues in the future to the budget, and perhaps in the year after, hopefully we'll be getting a decreasing amount, putting a decreasing level of free cash into it each year. Does that sound right, Mike?
Yeah, I kind of expressed this at the last select board meeting that yes, we're doing everything we can. I just want to remind everyone that we're only doing second calls for service, and we estimated 100 to 150 calls. I can tell you, Molly, are you okay with me just giving the statistics?
Yeah,
of what
absolutely.
We have
Yep.
So we've responded to 61 calls, second calls for service. So second calls of service are when our primary contracted Action Med 1 is actually out on a call, or if we have motor vehicle accident with multiple injuries, or another call that requires multiple ambulances at it. We have transported 42 patients, and we have requested advanced life support intercepts 14 times. And I want everybody to understand that while this ambulance currently is set up as a BLS ambulance service, when we request an ALS intercept, we then become an ALS level service ambulance. So we bill out that call as an ALS call. So we receive an ALS rate, and then we are billed by the ALS intercept. And normally that is anywhere between $300 to $500 for them to put their medics on our truck to go to the hospital. So we see an increase in the return on that. So we are actually operating in an ALS level. It's just that we are paying back that community that is assisting us with that. Mm-hmm. And so that's the current statistics we have since October 23rd. And again, I wish I could guarantee it, but I would never do that. Again, calls can go up. We've had multiple days in the past 2 to 3 weeks where this ambulance has been out multiple times during the week, which we haven't seen in the past. So it's been very busy. And again, our folks are working really hard on continuing and training. And like Molly said, there's so much paperwork for every type of insurance company We've contracted it's called Pro EMS. It's a private service that actually gets the bills in immediately. So as soon as the ambulance parks at the hospital, these folks are working to get our reimbursements on the rates. We did a survey of all of our surrounding fire-based EMS ambulance services. So we've put ourselves in so that we are at that average rate for a BLS call, and then also for an ALS call. And a lot of them are dictated by Medicare, Medicaid rates anyways. So they're the professionals who handle that, and then they get 4% of whatever they bring in receipts. Like Molly said, just with our regular ambulance contract, at the end of the contract, we have a 3-month look back period. So it can take even longer than 3 months, but that 3-month look back period is intended if we have a call on June 1st, in our fiscal year ends on June 30th. We need time to be able to bring in those revenues, or if the call is on June 30th, we actually have a 3-month look back period where they are working to get those revenues in, that would go to obviously to our stipend on the action side for the contract. But for our private ambulance, even though we started in October, if you just do a 3-month look back on that, we are now starting to bring those checks in, and then also direct deposit should be coming hopefully more steadily now that we have that company billing that out.
Mary, it looks like you have a question.
I'm wondering if, for this secondary ambulance service, if there was a cost to the town when we didn't have our own that this is replacing. I mean, did we spend money on a second, ambulance when we needed a second ambulance? I assume we had fees that we had to pay someone that now we're taking care of. I mean, I'm wondering if that $185,000 part of it is we were spending anyways because we had to pay someone else for the service.
Actually, we're just trying to maintain the best possible, quickest responses. So we have mutual aid set up with Amherst and Northampton, South Hadley, Granby. To our north, we have Hilltown. We have a number of private ambulance services around us. What we are looking to do, though, is to actually phase in this ambulance into a medical level where we would be bringing in the $770,000 that we could see in revenues that Action may be seeing in a year, and then also not paying that contract rate, which we could then utilize to actually stabilize our fire department and EMS budgets, where we would be funding staffing through that. So those receipts would be covering that cost. Like Linda is saying, the hope is that we would be able to self-sustain and have this covering those expenses. And then ultimately, the hope is that we can put together a capital portion of this. This ambulance was $20,000 from the city of Northampton, but it's a 2009. We're hoping that a portion of this funding that we bring in, we can put into capital like most departments do with their ambulance receipts. So we're not going to the town for a capital appropriation to buy a new one. We will be able to use those receipts from insurance to move forward to the next one.
But as we go along, also, we can advance to an ALS service after a year of being BLS. We have to do BLS. That is required of us for at least a year until we can get recertified that we can be ALS certified. So that's, I think, another thing that we're in the process of doing in moving our ambulance service forward. So I think people need to be aware of that it's actually a 2-step process that we're doing with the ambulance.
I think maybe Mary's question was, we used to pay another town for our full ambulance service before we engaged with Action. And that was the cost to the town up front.
And I think that it's not quite 185 if we were paying some of that anyways. In a way, this is helpful to the 185 is we don't have an expense we used to have. We have 185, but we might not have as much expense as we used to have. And I'm just assuming things, so I don't understand this well enough to know, but it just
and it's coming back to us.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we're basically, like Molly made a very good point. We're asking for that seed money to build that out. And then also Joyce, with how long it takes for us to build out into our ALS service. And I can tell you that we have folks on the department right now that are in the process of studying and testing for their paramedic level of care. So, we're looking at having a good complement of paramedics on board already. So our hope is, and we've also already applied for it, because it takes so long to do all this, we've already started working on our application for our ALS license. And there's not a significant amount of cost because our BLS ambulance, all the equipment is there. It would be the addition, obviously, of medications for the ALS.
Okay, next article.
Article 21 is me. So this is going to be to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or authorize the treasurer to borrow or otherwise provide up to $250,000 to fund a 25% match needed for $1 million grant award from the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness MVP program to improve resiliency in a stream reach that drains from Route 9 to East Street, or take any action related thereto. So Capital Planning Committee, Finance Committee, and Select Board all recommend 5-0-0. So the town of Hadley was awarded a grant through the Municipal Vulnerability Program to improve resiliency in a stream reach. So the stream floods the stream floods several times per year because of the two undersized culverts at East Street. So the primary recommendation is to upsize these culverts to reduce future flooding. The grant program has the 25% match, as I said before. So the cash match will be contingent upon favorable award of grant funding. So it's a competitive grant that might not be funded. Just wanted to put that out there. All right, next article.
This article was placed on the warrant by the Board of Assessors. Currently, the town offers a Clause 41 exemption, real estate exemption for seniors. The problem with Clause 41 is there are income and asset limits that cannot be met. The asset limit for Clause 41 includes the value of the home, and for a married couple, their assets have to be under $20,000. Changing to Clause 41C, the asset limits would go to $40,000 for a single and $55,000 for a senior, for a married couple, but it does not include the value of the home. So right now, the town has not granted a Clause 41 exemption application in years, if not decades. We're putting this forward with all the increases in taxes for the seniors and the debt exclusions. We thought this might be a good starting point to provide some relief to seniors. The income limits also go up, but they're not astronomical. So people in need would be able to get this. People that, once we see how many people would qualify for that, we can adjust the income limits up. Right now, including Social Security, a single individual would have to make less than $18,600, and a married couple would have to make less than $23,400. And we're one of the few communities left in the state that has not adopted 41C, 41B, or 41C and a half. And the assessors felt that this was a good starting point at 41C.
Dan, are they making you speak to this, or is one of the assessors going to speak to this?
I'll be handling this.
Okay, thank you.
This is going to be a lively one, I think. Not Article 24 may put some interest out there. But Article 23 is simply defining energy storage system, large scale and small scale. And it's pretty straightforward what an energy storage system is, and then it defines a small and large. That's pretty much it, but it goes hand in hand with Article 24.
Okay.
Jim, is it the same thing Shutesbury's putting in?
I have no idea. I don't know what Shrewsbury I see is putting in a battery storage bylaw, but I do not know what their battery storage bylaw. I have not seen it, so I can't answer that question and be honest with it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But I would guess they're similar. Okay. Next one. All right.
So I think actually it's all part of one article.
What is one article? I
Yes.
thought it was two different articles, one for the definitions and one for the battery storage.
So let's go back one screen. So it's in the warrant, but it did not make it into the presentation.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
just by way of background, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, the Article 23, the second part of Article 23 goes on for 8 pages or so. We already have a solar bylaw in place, but to integrate battery storage into the existing bylaw, it made more sense to readopt the existing bylaw with the battery storage language in it, rather than just paste on the battery storage language.
Yeah, and this will basically this will amending the bylaw will do is the existing bylaw allows energy storage or battery storage if you put in a solar system, a large scale. If you do not have a solar system associated, a standalone battery storage is not permitted. And when the bylaw was adopted, that was pretty much okay. The state has since said that you cannot make a bylaw that prohibits solar energy or energy storage with solar associated with solar energy. Well, I mean, you can't prohibit solar systems nor energy storage systems. And since our bylaw would prohibit a standalone storage system, if somebody was to come in and try to put one in, we'd have to go to court. They'd have to sue us, going to cost an arm and a leg, yada, yada, and it would probably prevail anyways. So by putting this bylaw forward, we allow standalone systems and we define how to put in a standalone system. If we were to go to court and lose, we would have no guidelines on putting in a battery storage or energy storage system, and they could just put in what they wanted, and without fire controls, we've got setbacks and everything else in there, containment systems, et cetera, et cetera. It's all defined. And if the bylaw was to fail, we would revert to the original solar bylaw, and it could be a disaster for the town.
So the illustration for this article is a stock illustration, but it's actually pretty useful. This shows a combination of a solar field with battery storage. The battery storage is the locker to the rear. This one happens to say Lockheed Martin on it, but we do have some of these. We did approve one sort of behind Fish and Wildlife and Hampshire Mall, which is outside of the Aquifer Protection District. So that is kind of what you'd see there. It's a combination of the solar panels that you see to your left, plus the box you see to the right of the illustration. The proposal for a battery-only storage is a series of boxes with no solar panels. So just so you understand what the difference is, and as Jim said, I think the idea is that we recognize the state wants us to adopt energy storage. We don't want to do it in the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. So that's what the bylaw says. We can have battery-only storage options in the agricultural residential district and in the industrial district, but not in the Aquifer Protection District overlay. Any questions?
I'm sure
So unfortunately, as I said at one of our meetings, this is a scenario where just say no doesn't seem to be an option. So as Dr. Zagrodnik has said, we can regulate, but we can't prohibit. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So Amy, you can take over from here.
All right. Yeah, pull up the thingy. So are there any, I was going to say, is there anyone online with any questions for any of the articles? And I can't really see if there's any raised hands. But is there anyone here for any questions?
I don't see any.
Amy, I don't see any. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So just a reminder that the town meeting is on May 2nd, 2024 at 7 p.m. at Hopkins Academy. Is there anything else I need to mention? Are we good?
No, you're good.
All right, awesome. Are there any announcements or anything on top of the annual town meeting?
Can wait.
There's nothing scheduled today.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, excellent. Motioned and seconded by Jane. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Roll call vote, Keegan.
Yes.
Chungalo.
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
And Nevin Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.